think about what your career is, yes, it's a wonderful opportunity to be abroad and I get to travel, but think also about the path of your career and what do you want to do and get noticed.
Welcome to another season of I Taught English Abroad, where we cover a range of topics from the world of TEFL. This podcast has it all, from passport stamps to recruitment, tips for teachers who want to be internet sensations, finding accommodation in far-flung locales, and so much more. Subscribe now so you don't miss any new episodes. Imagine your first ever teaching experience was in a purpose-built Korean village where everything was in English. Even if you've worked on film or TV sets, or in the entertainment industry in some form, it'd be quite a jarring experience. Well, that's what happened to Angie White, our next guest, who decided to explore the world of TEFL teaching after some time working in Hollywood. Our second on-location interview in LA, we discuss first lesson nerves, exploring cultural and family heritage, and what makes a great teacher. Here's Angie's unique story.
Hello and welcome to I Taught English Abroad. This is the second episode that we're doing in LA in person, and it's such a treat we're able to speak to Angie White, who works with us at the TEFL org, but obviously not quite in a garden shed in Inverness where the company started, but instead out here in LA. Angie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I can't believe you are here in person. It's so exciting to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, not at all. No, thank you for your time. So let's take it right back. So when did you first become interested in language? Did you grow up with English as a first language or as a tertiary language? How did your interest in languages come about?
By accident. I live in Los Angeles, and so like everybody else, dreams of working in the entertainment industry. Out of college, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and I tried that. Didn't work out, and one thing led to another. I said, okay, I want to get into the entertainment industry. Ended up working at an agency for agents as their assistant. And I'd have to say in 2006, I got burned out. And it was also at the time where my mom's brother living in South Korea had called and said, hey, Chuseok is coming. Oh my God, it was right about this time in 2006. He said, come over to Korea to celebrate Chuseok with us. So that was probably the first time I had gone abroad in a very long time because I've grown up in Los Angeles. And we went to South Korea and I was just like, wow, I'm out of America. I'm having the time of my life. I want to come back. What can I do? And my uncle was the one who said, you should get a TEFL certificate. And I said, what's a TEFL? So I started doing research and what are the different programs, and just settled on the cheapest course, enrolled, didn't have the online options that are available now, did everything by myself, turned in my assignments, got my certificate. No, I didn't even get my certificate yet. Started applying for jobs. And I was lucky enough to be hired even without my course being completed. And I landed in South Korea December 16th, 2006. And it was only supposed to be for a year, just for fun, just so I could be in another country, be back in South Korea. I'll tell you that 1 year turned into 2, turned into 3, started going to conferences, started self-studying all of the second language acquisition stuff. And I think that's when I started to become really interested in it through my self-study and going to my first Korea TESOL conference and meeting Dr. David Noonan in person, who I was like, oh my God, your name was on the books, and like meeting a celebrity. And then in 2010, I decided to pursue my master's degree. And from there, I just realized, wow, I'm actually good at this.
Excellent. So when did you start teaching then? What sort of year, what time scale we're looking at?
2006, when I landed in South Korea, my very first job was in a camp environment. Imagine about 200 students. Elementary, we'll have either elementary groups or middle school groups, and they'll come to the camp and they'll stay at this institute for 4 days. And it was a lot of edutainment, a lot of, song and dance and just a lot in the TPR. This institute was incredible because it's what was called an English village. So you'd have a mock restaurant, a mock airplane, like literally a cockpit with the seats, aisle seats and window seats, a clinic where they had real blood pressure things. So it was like immersing the students in an English-speaking country, and it was so much fun. A lot of work, but the kids went home on Friday so we could all relax.
So, and where was this?
This was in South Korea in a province called Chungnam.
Okay. I'm just wondering about how much of this how much of it was real and how much of it was pretend. So what was it like living there? Did you was it a bit jarring and figuring out what was real?
Oh my goodness. I'll tell you the first time I stepped into the apartment, I was ready to come back home because I was in this small town and my bathroom had the shower next to the toilet. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And where do I go buy food? I was just like dropped in the middle of nowhere. It was like Survivor. But I was like, nah, I can do this. And like, I actually preferred the smaller towns than the bigger cities. It's just much more cozy. But yeah, it was really surreal in the culture shock, and getting used to a different work culture was interesting. But I met so many people from South Africa. I met people from the UK, like just a very diverse group of teachers coming together for the common goal of teaching English. So it's incredible.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that culture shock because obviously you grew up in LA, and since coming to LA, I thought it was going to be like huge. I had a sort of sense of how big it was, but it really is absolutely gigantic. So what's it like going here from here to anywhere must feel strange, but what's it like going to somewhere like that small and that kind of purpose built? How long does it take to get over the culture shock?
Let's see. I was in a small town. I didn't have my car. I had to get around by bus or by taxi. The stores, like a 7-Eleven wasn't nearby, a mall wasn't nearby. Where do I buy clothes? Everything was just like little mom and pop shops. And then when you meet other expats and then you say, okay, where's the nearest larger city that we can go to and buy stuff? So you make connections, you make friends with other expats and explore the city. Then you become friends with your co-teachers, your Korean co-teachers and your co-workers, and they give you advice. And then suddenly you forget that you are a stranger in a new place because of these relationships that you build. And I tell the trainees, I say, make friends with the locals. It's nice to meet and be friends with the expats, but get to know the lay of the land, get to know the people. And they're going to be your best tour guides, and they're going to welcome you into their homes and share the culture and invite you places, and you'll feel, you won't even feel like you're in a different place.
So I have to ask, given that, you weren't always looking to being a teacher, it wasn't always kind of your plan. So take me through that first lesson then. So because you've done all this training, and obviously you've done more training since, and we'll try and cover the scope of your career because it is fascinating, that's why we're here. But talk me through that kind of first lesson. Did you get a moment of, goodness, this is what I'm doing now? Or was it all very much like a big rush? Like, how did it feel?
My first lessons were all based on SpongeBob. And I remember I was assigned the airport. And because I'm a creative person to begin with, it was fairly easy. It's like, oh, okay, I just walk them through the airport and make the materials. Funny enough, I didn't have a problem with that. I did have a problem with the classroom management because I hadn't been around kids, working in entertainment. It's a different environment. And I remember, and I still use this anecdote to this day, the kids had come back from lunch or something and were trying to get settled for class. And I was frustrated because they weren't settling down. And I yelled, "Shut up!" I just lost it. And my co-teacher was like, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "But they won't be quiet." And so I had to learn how to be patient. And I find it so ironic that people now say, Angie, you're one of the most patient people I've ever met. I'm like, you didn't know me back then when I yelled, shut up in class.
I do think patience is a learned thing, isn't it? So, yeah, but I mean, that's, you kind of, it is a funny anecdote, but it kind of touches to something where, you know, obviously your career had changed and the path of your life had changed. But when did you sort of feel, was it early on where you felt like, okay, I'm good at this, like I can do this, is something I'm really good at? Because clearly you had to have had a pretty good feeling about it early on to do what you're doing now.
Yeah. We did teacher training during the summer. So a month when I was working at the Institute, we'd have in-service Korean teachers who were teaching elementary, middle school students and high school teachers. They would come and get trained on, you know, just how to teach English in a more dynamic, innovative way. And I knew nothing about teacher training, and I always looked up to these more seasoned teachers who were able to train. And I think at that point, I said, I want to be like that. I'm going to get good at training. And so that's why I started that master's program. And I also had a mentor early on in my career who took me under her wing and I guess saw that I was good at this. And she just threw me off the deep end and threw me into workshops where I was teaching other native teachers how to teach. And oh my God, I remember my first workshop. I was just so nervous. I'm like, who am I? It was kind of that imposter syndrome, like, who am I to teach you? But I just did it. And I realized I really like this. I really like presenting. I really like training. And so I just want to get good at it. After my master's, I said, I think I want to go into teacher training full time. So I stayed at the First Institute for 6 years. Then I went to a full-time teacher training institute, and I was in charge of teaching writing. That was just, I think, the most incredible experience because instead of doing essays, we did a lot of genre and creative writing. And for me to be able to show teachers that writing is not a 5-paragraph essay, that you can write poems using English, and for them to unleash their own creativity as well was an amazing experience. So yeah, it was a combination of realizing as you're doing the job, you'll discover what you're passionate about. You might find that you love young learners. You might find that you love teaching high school. For me, it was teacher training, and I was very fortunate to have a mentor who opened up some doors for me.
Brilliant. We'll talk more about your teacher training journey just after this short break.
Feeling inspired? Fancy trying something completely new? Well, make your best move yet by signing up for a TEFL course with the most highly accredited provider on the planet. Here at the TEFL org, we offer a range of online and classroom courses that you can study at your own pace. All of our courses include top-of-the-range teaching materials and come with dedicated tutor support from experienced and highly qualified TEFL experts. And what's more, we'll give you money off to do it. Just enter the code PODCAST at checkout to get 50% off any of our internationally recognised TEFL courses. And that includes our best-selling 120-hour Premier Online course. With that code, you'll not only get 50% off, but you'll also get a free lesson plans pack. Within a matter of months, you could be a qualified TEFL teacher, out there exploring the world or working to your own schedule from home as an online English teacher. Just use the code PODCAST at checkout to get started.
We're back with Angie White here in Los Angeles. Now, you made reference there to a mentor. Who was that, and how important were they for you in the development of your career?
It was a supervisor. She was in charge of the elementary teacher training program, and I don't know, but just like, hit it off, and I would always go down to her for advice, and she liked my work and saw that I was very creative and I worked hard, and she sent me off to my first workshop to deliver. And then after that, even after she left the institute, because supervisors go through, they stay at an institute for a certain number of years and they get transferred, but she went to the district, I guess it was like the provincial education office, and she would still ask for me to go out and do, training and host workshops. So I was really excited a little nervous always, but no, it was an honor to do that, and just continue to deliver workshops even for Korea TEFL. I remember delivering my first conference. That was exciting, but first you get rejected, right? Your proposal gets rejected, and you're like, okay, maybe next year, and then you finally get that opportunity. And the last one I did was at the it was the International Korea TEFL, and that was super exciting because I had gotten rejected there before. And then, moving back to California, doing the California TEFL, super exciting just to watch how you go from, making SpongeBob materials and telling your kids to shut up to, now with the TEFL Award, even just training others and sharing your journey and letting them know, hey, this could be you one day, giving, training other teachers to be. So you never know where you're going to end up.
Well, yeah, and talking of kind of where you've ended up, you stayed in South Korea for 9 years.
Yes.
Right. So was that always kind of the plan? I mean, we'll talk about how your career progressed as well. Was it always your plan to stay in South Korea that long, or was it something you were going to try and move around, or what was kind of the plan?
The plan was, at some point, I just knew it was time to come home. I missed Los Angeles. I knew it was time to come back, and I also wanted to transition into the admin side, being a director of studies, academic director, center director. So I knew that if I wanted to take that step in my career, I needed to come back. And so 2016, February, we came back to Los Angeles, and I'll tell you that was kind of scary because you were so used to them having a stable work, housing was provided, and then you're back in Los Angeles, and in those 9 years, things had changed. Things had gotten more expensive. We tried to move back here at this location, but oh my God, wait, I didn't realize how much rent had gone up. And so we moved. We lived in Orange County for a while, and there was a 6-month period where I couldn't find work, and that was super scary. But I was fortunate to get hired by a language school in Santa Monica, and I worked as their assistant director of studies. And then from there, went on to another school where I was the academic director and then center director. And then from there, went on to work for an online startup as their educational programs director. So it was another journey of starting from zero and working your way up.
So that's a theme in your career. I just kind of want to ask about when you're in South Korea a bit more. You go from kind of being there and working in a language center and being, tell you to shut up, but you eventually become a head teacher.
Yeah, it's when you go into a school or an organization, and I tell the students in the TEFL courses, treat it as if it were a real job, because it is a real job. You want to give your best. You want to get along with your coworkers. You want to show management that you have potential, and opportunities will open up for you. So think about what your career is. Yes, it's a wonderful opportunity to be abroad and I get to travel, but think also about the path of your career and what do you want to do and get noticed. And once you do, those doors will open up. And even if you want to transition or go to another country, you're going to need a recommendation letter. So if you're not doing a stellar job, people will not vet, your work. So do the best that you can. And for me, it was not through anything that I pursued that I took a proactive stance and said, hey, I want this position. It was just they created it for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's a very obvious lesson for people who are listening and who want to kind of get into those more kind of senior roles. It's just about persistence, right?
Yeah.
And you talked a wee bit about creativity as well. How much do you think creating your own materials and putting your own approaches into place set you apart as a teacher, as the kind of person who could be a head teacher within 9 years of moving somewhere?
Yeah, I think I go overboard sometimes. With my PowerPoints, they had to be really elaborate and colorful. And trust me, I've seen some teachers who were fine with just a whiteboard and a YouTube video. And it's really all about your personality. For me, because I am a visual learner and I just love creating materials, that's what I do. but it may not be for everybody else. But the one thing that you have to be is passionate about teaching and interested in getting to know people from other cultures and understanding that they're going through their own journey and struggles of learning language. So those soft skills of compassion, empathy are really much more important than the skill of teaching.
In terms of when you were in South Korea as well, and you had to work with, you talked there about non-native speakers and native speakers, and you were in South Korea and you were doing teacher training at one stage there. What was that like in terms of, did you feel any nerves about being the quote-unquote foreign teacher, but going over there and kind of telling other teachers how they could maybe do things better? Was that quite a nerve-wracking experience for you?
Oh, of course. Well, there's two things coming out of that. Number one, when I went abroad in 2006, for me as an Asian American, that was quite unique. And I'm grateful for the institute that hired me that didn't care about that, because even though I'm a native speaker, they have a certain idea of what a native speaker looks like. So I didn't exactly fit the mold, but they took a chance, and good for me and good for them. It all worked out. But things are definitely changing. The landscape is changing. You'll see a more diverse group of TEFL teachers working abroad. So I'm really glad to see that. The other is it's nerve-wracking training teachers who have studied education in South Korea, who have been a teacher longer than I have. And here I am trying to give you advice and try different methodologies for teaching English, because that's my specialty, but they're so set in their ways pedagogically of how to run a class, how to do this. So they question, well, why would we play games? I have to focus on grammar. And it was really hard to get them out of the idea that being accurate with grammar meant being a good speaker, because there were so many that could cite the rules and would ask me some wild questions about grammar that I couldn't answer, but could not have a conversation like we are now.
And so, I mean, eventually were you able to kind of yield results from those kind of conversations, and the kids in South Korea that were being taught, were they more kind of proficient and able to hold conversations by the end? Because I mean, seeing that work must really change a teacher kind of forever.
Oh, absolutely. So as a teacher trainer, what I would do is just create scenarios. It wasn't textbook learning. It wasn't formal language training, read this, answer some post-reading questions. No, I would create scenarios. For example, this is my favorite one, news reporting. So I would post a really ridiculous picture, and they would go around and ask each other what happened, as if they were a reporter and interviewing the witness. And then they would have to write the news report. Of course, we'd go through the structure of a news report. And then I would say, okay, go record yourself and pretend you were a news reporter. One student would be like the cameraman, and the other would be the news reporter. And through something like that, they realize, okay, grammar's at play, right? Because we're using certain grammar points, sentence structure, vocabulary words. And they're like, okay, I see the point now. So it doesn't always just have to be this formal textbook. And they're very textbook-centered and test-centered. And showing them that creativity allows students who may not be interested in English an avenue to get interested in English through music, through arts, sports, etc.
We'll be right back with Angie.
Are you looking for a weekly guide to what's going on in the TEFL world? Do you want some advice on everything from job interviews to underrated TEFL destinations? Well, the TEFL Work blog has it all. Every single week, we tackle some of the biggest questions in the TEFL industry. Stay up to date with the latest trends in English teaching, find tips to make your next job application your best yet, or get inspired and read about the experiences of TEFL Org graduates teaching all around the world. Whether you're brand new to the industry or you've seen it all, we can guarantee an interesting read each week. To find out more, go to tefl.org/blog. That's tefl.org/blog.
And I'm back with Angie here in Los Angeles. Now, you are very clearly someone with a passion for developing teaching talent. It's what you do. So it's maybe a bit of a vague question, but I'm sure, again, that you'll have a really, really insightful answer. What do you look for in a teacher?
Those soft skills that we talked about. Passion, well, of course, you have to be passionate. Everybody sure needs to make money, but if this is just about making money, I say you're going to be miserable because there are some things about teaching that require patience and you receiving feedback and criticism about your teaching, and if you can't handle that, it's not going to make you very happy in this profession. When I used to hire teachers, I would run into teachers that would say, "Wow, I've never taught before, but I studied it formally, or I don't have a lot of experience." And I say, "Well, tell me what you would do with a student that just seemed uninterested and not motivated." And if they were able to give me a response, would ask what they liked or maybe stop the lesson and talk to them, I was like, you get it. Because sometimes you just need to stop the lesson and say, okay, what's going on? You're tired because you had a test last night. Okay, should we just play some games today? Go with the flow. It doesn't always have to be a strict warmer, lead in, present, practice, produce. You have to remember these are people that you're teaching, and read the room, and have compassion and empathy. And that's what's going to win you over. I had students in Korea, middle school students especially, who would just sleep because they were tired. They had to go to academies after. I just put a piece of candy next to them, give them a pat on the shoulder, and it's okay. And that way, if I had to discipline them, or not discipline, but if they were acting out or not paying attention, I could say, okay, be quiet, and they wouldn't resent me because they knew that I cared about them.
Yeah. And so I'm just kind of wondering, having been both a teacher and a teacher trainer, and you kind of alluded to it earlier on, there are kind of moments when your teaching clicks or a lesson clicks, and you have a real breakthrough moment with a student. I'm wondering, what are the breakthrough moments that you have with teachers in training? Are there certain times where you think, or certain scenarios where you think they get it now, or is everyone kind of different, or how does that manifest?
Well, like I said, I was the writing instructor, and these teachers were taught that writing was perfect grammar and a 5-paragraph essay. We did something called a defining moment essay, and I walked them through it. They had to find a defining moment, and they would write we'd turn it into a book, and then we would have a book signing. Oh. And then they would have to go to the front and read their stories. I kid you not, I'd say about half the class, when they read their stories, would cry. And then the whole class would start crying. And it was such an amazing thing to see, because culturally, in South Korea, they're not going to break down emotionally in front of everybody, especially, they want to save face, but they were just so open about experiences, and they were sharing like really personal stories. And I was like, that's the power of writing. That is the power of creativity. And that's what I wanted them to understand, that language has this power to connect. And when you're teaching, help your students to connect with themselves, with each other, through writing, through art. And it was for them a breakthrough moment to realize, wow, I never thought I could write in English. I always thought I was a terrible writer, and you helped me write a story, and I'm so proud of myself. And that is such an incredible aha moment for them and for me.
Absolutely. And not everyone who you train, not all the teachers will necessarily always be teachers. It's a great pathway to the rest of their lives, essentially. That could involve moving to any number of countries, or even staying home, starting their own businesses, all that kind of stuff. So it's a wide scope. And I was wondering if you could talk us through any of the students you have that have taken up roles that are maybe a little bit different, or maybe something that you wouldn't necessarily expect after doing teacher training.
Let's see. I remember when I would train students in person, we'd follow each other on Instagram, and I see they're doing something totally different, whether in music or graphic art. But when you ask them, why are you pursuing this? A lot of times they'll say it's a backup. And I do believe that if you have this TEFL certificate, you will not be unemployed a day in your life. And I think that is proven true, because you can go overseas. When there was the housing crash, I was in South Korea at the time. The economy just was terrible, but I was still working. And if it happens again, I could teach. When the pandemic hit, I'd already taught online and I was still employed. And all these other teachers in public schools were trying to transition online and having such a terrifying experience. Like, oh my gosh, what do we do online? How do we teach online? And for me, it was very easy because I had already done it. But I have in the TEFL training courses, people who are former lawyers, who are graphic designers, who are in the entertainment industry. And the ones that have worked in the corporate environment get burned out. And they're like, I think I want to teach because I do aspects of teaching, whether in training or giving presentations. And I realize I really like this. So I'm curious how it can manifest itself or transition into my TEFL career. And we do a lot of, we do some career talk in our TEFL courses because they're very curious about what they can do with their past life into their new life.
So since you moved back to LA, you talked about some of the roles that you've taken up, and I just I wonder, people might listen to this and think it's counterintuitive in some way to, in an English-speaking country, predominantly English-speaking country, even somewhere as cosmopolitan as as multicultural as LA, teaching English as a foreign language can be, a little counterintuitive somehow. Clearly, that's not the case. So, could you speak to your experience on that?
Los Angeles is a hot spot. There are many language schools in California, and international students come to Los Angeles because they want to experience the culture, the weather, and study English while they're at it. In other places around the U.S., the number of language schools are very, very small. Or they might be at a university, which would have maybe more traditional type of teaching versus, the more creative things that we can do in a language school. And at the moment, when students F1 students have to transition back into in-person learning, many were living in different states and they had access to online English courses. But now since they have to go in person, they're kind of stuck because they're like, we don't have a lot of language schools around us. I'm like, well, maybe you're going to have to come to California. But it's because of the location and the diversity that you mentioned that TEFL is a place where TEFL can thrive here. And it is. People are doing one-to-one teaching. They're teaching online. They're going to the language schools. So it's alive and well here in LA.
And without, I don't want to give out too much of your personal life in a podcast, but on the way to record, I was really struck with the fact that we bumped into someone who from this kind of world of English teaching. So could you speak to that as well? Because we've talked before with people who work primarily online or they have some kind of content element to what they do. And there's a great online presence, there's a great online community of teachers that are really well connected. But it seems like here there's also that in-person connectivity. There's a really good community of sort of TEFL, TESL, whatever you want to call it, teachers. Is that true? Do you feel like you're part of something that's close knit here?
When I met my neighbor, we were doing laundry and we just struck up a conversation and then we were just talking about our careers and it was like, oh, you're also in the TEFL industry. So it's almost like we're like this hidden gem, but when you discover somebody from your tribe, you're like open arms because people don't really know what TEFL is. Mm-hmm. But as I've been mentioning to a number of people, when we do our TEFL courses, the number of recent college grads doing a TEFL course is increasing. So the word is out there that this is a legitimate, bona fide career path and that you can do great things and be successful with it. The word's spreading, but yeah, it's when you meet your group of teachers in a school, that's your tribe. But then when you meet them outside of school, just in passing, it's like, wow, the community that I live in produces a newsletter, and one of the advertisers has a language school. And so I just emailed her and I said, because she had taught in Korea, and I just reached out and I said, where in Korea did you teach? So it's like I found another person from my tribe. It was just amazing. And we had coffee the other day and we're just sharing our experiences. So when you run into somebody, it's like you could be a stranger, but the minute you mention that you've taught abroad or that you're also in the industry, it's almost like, oh, well, we've been friends for 10 years now.
It really is. It's wonderful. And without kind of resorting to cliche, and I'm trying my best not to, but it does make the world smaller, but in a nicer way, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, without kind of advertising the TEFL too much or without blowing our horn too much, the fact that we're meeting here is kind of evidence of how things are growing. You are proof positive of the fact that, it's an industry that's growing and growing over time, and you kind of just talked there about how much it's grown. So tell us about your own involvement with the TEFL org, how exciting it is that, you're working with people who are based there's Thomas in Madrid, there's us up in Scotland, we're all over the place. What's your sort of connection with us, and how has that been fruitful for you so far?
Oh, it's been amazing. I gotta say, I was really floored when Thomas reached out because I had sent him my resume a few years ago. Are you interested? Are you hiring any more TEFL trainers? And they weren't. And then just last year, Thomas reached out and said, would you be interested? And I said, of course. And so I started, training and doing the online training courses. And just out of the blue, because I guess I'm in California and that's a hot spot for a lot of students, I got reached out by, Angie? And hey, can you help us, identify some students in Los Angeles because we want to grow our presence in the U.S. And I was like, sure. And then from that, I met Alan, and then through that, I met you, and here we are. And it's amazing to see this company grow because I was telling Thomas when the pandemic hit, a lot of TEFL companies were suffering. But to see the TEFL org growing, and as somebody who's new and coming into the company and recognizing, for them to recognize, hey, that I could play a role in the organization aside from training has just been a wonderful opportunity. And I'm so grateful and honored that you would even consider me to do other things besides training. And so that, I think that also just speaks to what we're talking about. Whatever you do, whatever work you do, be the best and stay positive, and people will recognize your talents and find a use for you.
And when talking of talents, there are going to be people who listen to this who maybe are themselves Californian or based in the US and they want to move to South Korea, or they want to move anywhere, and they want to get into the same kind of career path as you. What would be your advice, especially as someone who changed careers and someone who wasn't always someone who had teaching in mind? What advice would you give to, beyond kind of just do it, because obviously just do it, but in terms of, practical advice, what would you say to someone who's kind of teetering on the edge of, I should do this?
I mean, honestly, just go for it if you can. It's so easy to say, follow your dreams, but in the real world, we have bills to pay. We have rent. We have financial responsibilities, and we can't just up and leave, right? So if it's going to take time to get to the point where it's okay financially to just pack everything up and move, take that step. Take whatever steps are necessary to make that transition. Don't hesitate, because the longer you hesitate, if you hesitate for 6 months, within that 6 months, you could have already started your path. But if you are okay and can take that leap, honestly, just do it. It's life-changing. And I never would have thought the path of my career would have changed the way it did had I not gone abroad. And I think I also grew as a person. I developed so many skills living abroad that I don't think I would have developed had I just stayed in the comfort of my own zip code.
That is a really, really important thing. And I think, for anyone who makes that first move abroad, it's something that we've covered in another podcast that was recorded recently. It can be the making of someone. Would you say that was the truth for you as well? Because even though you had established these careers, you talk about the time that you moved abroad as really, really significant to you. Would you say and especially your initial experiences in South Korea have informed the rest of your life, really, without sounding too dramatic about it?
Oh, no, it's because my mom is Korean. For me, it was a a cultural experience to get back in touch with the motherland and my identity as an Asian American, and truly understanding what it meant to be Korean American. Growing up, my mom spoke English. I'm from a generation where, my mom wanted me to assimilate and to be Americanized. And then when you go abroad and live 9 years in the country that is part of your culture, it's really eye-opening. And you start to really reevaluate your cultural identity and your identity as a person. And so I wanted to learn Korean also because it really helped me in the classroom because I was teaching the kids. But I developed a much deeper appreciation of my culture and the language. And that was really important. So that was also a very, that was my defining moment. I could write an essay about that.
Amazing. And just to finish off, I think you touched on a really, really important part there. There are people who are going to listen to this who maybe don't feel, like it sounds like you kind of alluded to it, there are going to be people who maybe don't feel as though they're part of what a typical TEFL teacher, what a typical person who goes abroad and teaches might be like. And so without getting extremely political about it, what would your advice be to someone who maybe feels like for whatever reason, predominantly because of their background or either this or that, they maybe don't feel like they're part of the equation here? What would you say to people? Because that's obviously, an important thought, but
it's reality. It really is. And unfortunately, there's social media and there are TikTok videos that are created by people who are in certain countries at the moment, whether as an expat, an influencer, or a teacher, and they have their set of experiences. That's their experience. That doesn't have to be your experience because you have a way to react. If somebody has never met somebody like you before and they approach you in a certain way that in America you might find offensive, remember, you're not in America anymore. You're in a different country. So open up the lines of communication. Be an ambassador. And open your eyes to the world. I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions, is that if I'm going to teach English, I'm also going to teach culture. Yes, you are going to teach culture, but you're not trying to turn your students into an American or anything like that. But you are exposing them to people they've never met. They may not have met someone like you, and you have not met someone like them. So it's a wonderful opportunity to be to develop cultural intelligence and trying new foods, trying to speak the language, getting around the city and just having small talk with people. I think that is so important, and that should definitely be part of the teaching experience, is developing the cultural intelligence.
Brilliant. And just finally, Angie, on a considerably lighter note, we find ourselves here in Los Angeles, and I just wondered, from your perspective as someone who lives here, what should I be checking out? What have you got any recommendations just to finish off?
My goodness. Well, I think you've already hit up the Grow. You've been to the farmers market. There is on Wilshire the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and you'll see some lamp posts. That's also a really popular place to take selfies. Oh, if you like dinosaurs, the La Brea Tar Pits is right behind us.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yes, and Santa Monica. It really depends on what you like to do.
It's a very, very big place, and I'm sure I'll be able to see.
Oh, there's something for everyone. Sunset Strip, Hollywood Boulevard, or even just the local places. So enjoy. It's such a diverse place. And if you're able to go into Koreatown or La Placita Olera, Watts, this diversity that exists in this city is so dynamic. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think I could ever find myself living anywhere but my city of Los Angeles.
Well, that seems as good a note as any to finish on. Angie, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to I Taught English Abroad, a podcast series by the TEFL org. To keep up to date with every episode, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your streaming platform of choice. And we love feedback, so feel free to leave us a review on any platform you like. For more information about the TEFL org, or about teaching English as a foreign language in general, head on over to TEFL.org. That's TEFL.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.